Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Happy New Year. It is 2025, and my name is Kimberly Carey. I am the owner of So Sassy Stitcher in Northwest Arkansas. I found on the Stitch and Snip website, they are located in Garden Valley, Idaho. They had a couple of kits on clearance for uber cheap. So I decided to grab a couple of them. I'm going to do some block of the months on my own. They were block of the month kits through Stitch and Snip, but these were full kits that I ordered. Just got them in today, and the first one that I'm working on is this Westport by Whirligig Designs. It is definitely not for the faint of heart. It is not a beginner quilt by any means. I think with some work, beginners could do it, but you're gonna have some frustrations if you're a beginner trying to do this quilt. If you've had some practice, this one's gonna be a good one for you to learn some new techniques on. So first thing that I always do when I get a kit like this or a new pattern that I'm gonna work on is I make sure that I go through the whole pattern and make sure that I know that I have everything that I need, that all of my material is there and all of that. So I'm just gonna walk through that with you. So these are the general directions. This one does require a couple of special rulers. I'm gonna have to get the second one that it requires. The first one is this 45-degree half square triangle to be able to make half square triangles that are perfect. Okay. Sometimes with half square triangles, doing them the more traditional way, they can get a little wonky. You can do them that way. It's fine, especially if you use things like triangulations and things like that, especially if you're doing a lot of them and then you trim them up. So we're going to see how that goes with this one. They also have one that they want you to get that is the 90-degree quarter square triangle. So basically adding, having 4 triangles in one square. That is a ruler that I don't have. I will be getting it. But right now I don't need it until month 4. So I've got a little bit of time to acquire that. I'm gonna need this one first. And I already had that one. All right, so made sure that I understood that. This one does come in 2 different sizes that they have. This particular kit is the 99 by 99. So it is the larger one. You can see here the different blocks that we're going to do and then the different fabrics. This particular kit, they changed 2 of the fabrics out, which is fine. They liked those better than the ones that came with it. Anna and Rena at the Stitch and Snip are fantastic working with colors. They really put good fabrics together. I love all of their kits. It's so hard to decide which ones to do. So I don't mind that they changed those 2 out. So this one has 12 different blocks that we're gonna do. So I'm gonna do 1 a month, and then that last month we'll be putting everything together. I might put together as we go if I can, but this one, the way that it is designed is these blocks are kind of spread out all over the place as far as the ones that are similar. So like this pinwheel one, you have it here, here, and here. So it's gonna be a little harder to put it together until the very end. So we'll see how this goes. I also went through, because I'm doing the larger version of this, I went ahead and highlighted through all of them which one I'm doing, just so that my eyes are drawn to that and I don't accidentally cut the wrong thing. The size for what you're doing is the same on the other one. You're just cutting more for the larger one, because instead of 2 blocks, I'm making 3 blocks, essentially is what it is. So we are doing block number 1. I have it all kind of stepped out for you. This one is a little bit different because we do have a partial seam that we have to work with. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to take your squares. Once you have everything cut, make sure that you cut everything according to directions. I label everything. I get little labels like this right on them, so that as I cut, I put the labels on. You can see here, that way I don't mix things up. So you've got these smaller rectangles and some 2-inch squares. I went ahead and marked all of my diagonals on these 2-inch squares so I knew where I was going to stitch on my machine for these. And if you have, there are certain additions that you can put on your machine that make it to where you don't have to mark all these, saving a little bit of time. If you have that, great, just know how to use it. I went ahead and marked these so that I made sure that it was where I needed it to be. So you can see, let me get the rest of these here, that I had 2 different colors that I put on my background. Okay, so this is what it looks like when I first sew it on. Okay, then I'm gonna iron them open to be where they need to be. Okay, I notice I haven't trimmed this yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and iron it open first, because what that does is then I can come back through here and I'm gonna use an 1/4 ruler. It's got this little lip right here, and I'm gonna put it right there. And because I have that little bit of a fold, it kind of stops it at that seam so that it just is a little bit added protection, I guess, of getting that in the right spot and cutting that off where I need it to be. And so you're gonna do that with all of these added blocks so that you end up with a rectangle with this different color on here. Okay, so these are gonna get ironed open like this, and then I'm going to trim. You can trim and then iron open. I find that it does do better and it lays better and doesn't stretch and all of those wonky things if you iron it before you trim it, but do what works for you. Okay, we all do things a little bit different. That's okay. Find the method that works best for you. All right, so now I have these guys, and you can notice that I have the 2 different colors for this particular pattern. This one, I'm gonna start with the light colored one. There's not as many of those. You can see I have these darker squares marked as something different. So the way that this is going to work is this gets sewn onto here like this. And I'm gonna stitch to center to 2/3 of that blue. Okay, I'm not gonna stitch all the way down because what I have to do is I have to go in a circle with these. And so if I stitch all along there, then I can't put this last piece on. Now, as I did this, I realized that I needed to iron this one to the opposite direction than what I had started. So when I started this, I ironed to where it went towards the blue. Okay, most of the time that is how I would do it. But when I got to the center, then I had some issues with this, and I'll show you that in a minute. So you can see on this one that this is stitched partway down. I gave myself room to be able to finish that seam out, and we'll get to that point in a minute. And then you iron it open, and I'm gonna iron it open when I do this one. I'm gonna iron it towards the white so that this blue stays nice and straight and doesn't have that curve in it. All right, now you can see, okay, so I have this. Then the next piece that I'm gonna put on, I'm gonna put on at the top like this, okay? So that this triangle is at this corner, okay? So I lay it on, stitch across. I'm gonna open this up, and again, I'm gonna iron towards the white away from this center square. And then you can see that when I do that, that point right here is right at that dot. Okay, if you line it up with this side over here, that should match up as long as your stitching is at that 1/4 inch seam. Okay, so then once I have this, then the next one goes on like that. So it's going to get flipped over. I'm going to match it up with this side over here, stitch across, and then iron that open, again, ironing out. Okay, so then once I have this ironed open like this, then this last one is going to go on like this, making sure that, again, that triangle is on my corners pointing in so that that corner can match up. Okay, so that's going to go on like that. Okay, here's the next one. The key is when you do this, you have to make sure that this first piece stays out of the way. So you can see that by having it folded in on this one, it creates a little bit of an issue. It's still doable. It just makes it a little bit more difficult. So learning from that, next time I'm going to iron that one out so that it stays nice and flat so that it's easier to put this last piece on. Okay, then it's going to get ironed out again like so that I can then finish sewing these together. So it gets ironed out, and then you fold this first piece over so that I can stitch the rest of this seam. And again, by having this pointed out, folded out, this corner right here is going to be a little bit different, and it's going to make this last seam nice and flat here so that it's easier to do that last seam. But you just do this last seam. So I just have a little bit of overlap right here. Okay. And then I'm going to iron that open, and you can see that for the most part, my corners did really well. They're right here at the points of my square, which is exactly where I want them. Okay, so it is a little bit different because I'm working in a circle, and I'm not going to have that full seam to begin with, and then I have to work that last one in when I'm finished. Then once you have 4 of these guys all done and ironed, then I'm going to put them together, and I'm going to have those lighter ones in the center to make that windmill in the center. Okay, now you can see that my edges actually lined up pretty good for these where they met the other blocks. Okay, and I have about 1/4 inch here so that when I add my borders, it's going to come, and I should have pretty good points. Okay, and all of my corners or my edges are that way. That is what we want, because if my point is lower, I'm going to end up chopping those points off, and then it's not going to look nice and crisp like you want it. Now, the other thing with this one, because we have all of these seams right here, we have 8 seams coming together in the back. That makes it really bulky if we do a traditional iron, okay? And you can see what I'm talking about here with these. On my next ones, this is actually going to be opened up, and so it'll look just a touch different right here. But on this center, you can see that when I ironed in a circle, and I popped this seam just a little bit so that it lays nice and flat in the center, so that I don't have this big old bulky seam that then when it comes time to quilt it, I'm going to have a hard time getting over, and it's going to create this weird lumpiness. This is going to lay a lot flatter, and it'll do a lot better when you go to quilt it, okay? It's just going to make everything look a little bit nicer. From here, I'm just going to do my typical borders. So I have my short borders. They're going to go on either side like that. And then I'm going to have my longer borders. Obviously, I've got seams in there, so these aren't quite correct when it looks like this, but that's what it's going to look like. I'm going to have those borders on there. Figured you guys could handle that, and I didn't need to put that on there. What I really wanted you to see is that I do have this 1/4 inch from the point of my triangle to my edge, And that is super important when you're putting this block together so that we get those nice crisp points and we're not chopping points off. So this is block number 1. If you are also working on this, then I hope this helps you understand the process a little bit. I will be doing block number 2 in February. I have lots of things to quilt and going back to school and all of those things. So this is kind of a weekend project for me. So I hope this works out well for you. I will see you back in February, and happy quilting.